Colin Simmons is a twitched-up defender with elite first-step quickness, and he's one of the most purest pass rushers in the NFL draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I'm Damian, Parson. That's Keith Sanchez, and today's episode is brought to you by Kalshi. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use the code Locked On to get $10 when you trade. 10 Kalshi, trade on anything. And on today's episode, we're breaking down another explosive pass rusher, but this time out of Texas, Colin Simmons. We're going to explain the grade, give you any NFL comps that come to mind a little bit later on. We're going to talk about the concerns with this NFL draft profile, but we're going to start with the good news, the great things, the pros when it pertains to this young, explosive pass rusher. Keith had a really good season for the Texas Longhorns last year. He's a true sophomore. He's been a guy that's had the eye of draft analysts since he stepped on campus as a freshman. Colin Simmons, 12 sacks last year, 14 QB hits, 35 pressures. Keith, when you think about this young man and his game, I think he's listed at 6'3", 240 pounds even. What stood out to you? What's that superpower A trait that we should be looking at going into the college football season?
Yeah, DP, I think, first of all, it's important to highlight the production part, right? Because a lot of top-tier players, and it could be edge rushers, right? You almost have to project production. And this young man, look at his 2 years, DP. Obviously, he's going into his junior year, true junior. First year, DP, 9 sacks, right, in the 2024 season. And then in 2025, 12 sacks, right? Like, this guy's sack production is outstanding. I think that's the part that needs to be highlighted for Colin Simmons and needs to be, I guess, kind of put forward. Because, like you say, a lot of times we would get top prospects and especially edge rushers, but the sack production isn't there. So we have to watch the film and talk about what could have been, right? Sometimes, like, okay, that could have been a sack there and things like that. But, man, I'll say this young man is polished at the end of the day. A very polished edge rusher. And we talked about our guy from South Carolina yesterday. Almost they're probably polar opposites in a different context, right? Because this young man, you can tell he has an array of pass rush moves. The dip, the bend, the speed to power, knowing when to trigger, taking inside to outside track, outside to inside track. He's a very nuanced, detailed pass rusher, and that's how he wins. He wins because obviously there's athletic traits there that we'll discuss, but he wins because he understands what he's doing at a very high level and he executes. DP. It's an NFL tool bag that he has as a pass rusher and just hand counters and maneuvers that he knows when to trigger.
100%. I think you put the perfect word out there, Keith. Polished. He is. He's polished. He is detailed. He's nuanced. He knows how to win. What we talked about with Dylan Stewart, like Dylan Stewart is winning off of just raw size, ability, and athleticism, and just elite physical God-given tools. And then we talked about at the end of the show yesterday. It's like, man, if he can put it together where he knows how he wants to attack guys, rep after rep, down after down, those true drop back sets where there's no run game you got to worry about. It's just pinning your ears back and getting back there, but you got to have a plan. You can tell watching Colin Simmons, he has a plan on how he wants to attack offensive linemen. And like you said, the array of pass rush moves, that repertoire, he has a bag. He has a bag on how he knows how to get to the quarterback. He plays with a hot motor as well, right? This is a guy that plays with his hair on fire, just like Dylan Stewart. Different body types, but plays with good pad level and leveraging as a pass rusher. I can't remember which game it was, but he was kind of almost wide-nined out. They had a strong side. They had a tight end on his side, so it kind of bumped him out a little bit wider. And he tricked, like when that first step, he has an elite get-off. That first step, he's even with you. And for tackles who don't have that recovery athleticism, remember when the first time we watched Olu Fashanu, and we were like, you was texting me that, and he's like, hey, you might want to watch this kid. And it was like, and then I turned on the tape, I'm like, I saw him get beat, and then I saw him flip his hips like a corner. And I was like, hey, Offensive tackles aren't supposed to be able to do that. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
that's a different beast. You're not getting that most times, not at tackle, right? So if he gets even with you, it's like a receiver. He's leaving and he's getting to the quarterback. Keith, I felt like also because I'm trying to think which game it was. They used him as a spy. I'm trying to think which quarterback they were. They had him spying, but John Mateer, Oklahoma, Oklahoma game. They pulled him off the line of scrimmage. They backed him off into the stack backer look, and they had him spy John Mateer. And I think that was smart in itself because Steve Sarkisian and the company knew that John Mateer's coming off the thumb surgery. He wasn't 100% healthy to throw the football like he used to. So he's going to lean on his legs and try to create. And they use Colin Simmons to spy him. So you see that versatility and that positional versatility, Keith, and just the ability to impact the game in multiple ways, right? We talked about that with Dylan Stewart, how he can rush he can get the inside track and things like that. You can probably bump him down, things of that nature too, and do different things with him as well. But Colin Simmons, I wouldn't be shocked, Keith, if you could play a little stack backer with him with his body type and the athletic profile that he has. Not saying that you want to do that time and time again, but like being able to pull him off, do some fire zone blitzes, different things like that. Just get creative with your looks and throw something different at the offense by not having him rush and having him drop off and be able to be an underneath shallow defender rather than trying to drop off 15, 20 yards into hook curl or something crazy like that.
Yeah, no, and that could be an interesting usage, DP. You talk about versatility, just because, like you said, it would provide for whatever defense in NFL drafts him, provide that opportunity to throw exotic looks, right? And you know that can be confusing if you're like, hey, kind of playing Where's Waldo with the best pass rusher, right? And also in the sense of the fact of too that some of these guys, right, it's almost like with the defensive tackles, and you drop them in coverage, and it's just like, okay, we know that's mostly just for the look of it, right? Like the impact on that is not really high.
But we know you're not doing this too many times.
Yeah. But with Colin Simmons, I mean, his athleticism, DP, say he's an edge rusher, and I mean, and there's even some edge rushers, right, that you like, okay, I don't necessarily want to consistently put you in space, right? Like that's not the thing. But with him, I think that his change of direction, DP, and you see it through his pass rushes, his change of direction and dip and bend, to me projects to him being a good athlete in space, right? Like just moving around laterally, like planting the foot in the ground, being able to redirect the plan and redirect situation. So I think dropping him in coverage could be a good thing because it gives more, like we talked about, just different looks and more exotic looks.
No, and I mean, even to that point too, Keith, he's a guy that I like pass rushers who don't just run themselves out of the plays. Like, hey, if you get too far upfield and you can get your eyes on the quarterback, can you retrace your steps, gear down and work back around the tackle? He does a good job of that as well. They use him on twists and stunts, similar to Stewart, give him that free run, looping around the big boys and give him that A-gap pressure. And now he's right in the face of the quarterback. So just a really talented, and I think I said in the cold open, he's the purest pass rusher in the class. Like just, you're talking about just pure, like right now, just like pure pass rush. Like that goes to him, right? The freakiest pass rusher with the athleticism, tools, and everything has the highest ceiling. Well, that's, of course, is Dylan Stewart, but a guy that knows, and he's proven to know how he wants to get to the quarterback and how he's going to get to the quarterback. Yeah, that's Colin Simmons. He has the mentality. He has the game plan. I think that's the big thing. It's similar to like the athletic quarterbacks, Keith. Like you got those athletic or those big arm quarterbacks, right? Like you see the Josh Allens and the Mahomes. Those boys be like, listen, I can do things that the rest of you guys can't, and I'm gonna do those things. I'm gonna try those things. You know what I mean? Like there's some throws, just basketball. Steph Curry and Damian Lillard took shots that I don't want anybody else taking because you are not that. Like you can't shoot. The shot from that was years ago, Damian Lillard versus the Thunder, and he hits that 45-footer to end the game against Paul George. I'm like, Paul George was in press conference like, that's a bad shot. He was like, that's a bad shot. He was like, well, it went in. You know what I mean? He waved goodbye. But that everybody can't do that. It's the same thing with like a Dylan Stewart is where, hey, he's got that type of ability that he can do things others can't. And guys like, you look at Colin Simmons, he's just well processed. Like his process is good. The results are there. And that's what you love to see from a potential first-round pick.
100%. DP, let's do this, man. We talked about the pros of Colin Simmons, right? The sack production is there, the nuance, the details of Colin Simmons, and appears to be a top 10 lock, right? But what is preventing him from getting into that number 1 overall pick, right? Does he have the opportunity to do that? We'll discuss the concerns for Colin Simmons coming up next.
Support for today's episode comes from Indeed Sponsored Jobs. When workplace chaos hits and you need the right hire, Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps connect employers with candidates who match specific needs like skills, certifications, and locations. So less time gets spent searching and more time gets spent finding the right fit. People are finding quality hires on Indeed right now. And in the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. And it's usually the biggest difference isn't someone doing more work. It's more like having somebody who knows exactly what needs to happen and helps everything run smoother. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. 6'3", 240-pound edge rusher out of Texas, Colin Simmons. We just heaped a lot of praise on this young man, Keith. What were some of the things that stood out to you from a just a concern standpoint? We're like, man, this could hold you back in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, right? 6'3", 240 pounds. I'm not sure if that's 6'3", 240 pounds. I have to be honest, DP.
I'm with you.
And watching him, the player I thought of, and I can't totally put him in his bracket because the player that I'm about to bring up didn't have as much production as Colin Simmons, but he reminded me of BJ Ojulari from a size standpoint. And BJ kind of stood at that 6'2 and a quarter, like in more 240 than 245, right? More 240 than 250. And so looking at the overall size, I think he's solid in the run game, but there's going to be run game concerns, being able to hold in a run game. And then also too, you mentioned like the Olu Fashion, right? Yeah. That's okay. I think that was my first time ever saying his name. That way, those offensive tackles that check the height, weight, athleticism box that can take away the speed part, but they also have the length and the size to make you play through them. And then do you have the length to play through them, right? To win against those guys. I think, and for me, DP, that the concern is the size, because I was in we still have comps to bring up and stuff like that, but I was just juggling back and forth on, is he really 6'3", 240 throughout the situation? And if he's not, then how is that going to impact me? Because this is still a projection, right? Like we're still projecting these guys on what they would do in the NFL, not about so much of, hey, what we think you can continue to do in college. It's, hey, when you get to the NFL, what type of player would this be? So have to take that into account.
Yeah, Keith, that's exactly how I feel too. The concerns it's not something that he can actually change. Like the questions, it's like, okay, you're sick. Are you 6'2", 240, or are you 6'3", 240, whatever? Like whatever your height, weight, arm length, and just natural God-given size is when you're measured and weighed in at the combine, whatever that is. It's not much fluctuation that's going to happen with that. You're not going to bulk up to 265 because that's going to take away your A trait, that first step explosiveness and quickness and dip and bend. We don't want you to gain too much weight. But that's why it makes the projection tough, Keith, because we've seen the NFL mess up and ruin players because they don't like hit a certain benchmark from a height, weight, arm length, and size standpoint, to when then we're trying to overcompensate. We're like, okay, well, let's bulk you up to 255 since we worry about you in the run game. And it was like, well, I'm not as fast as I used to be, guys. So now I can't get to the quarterback.
I didn't think about that, and because they do it, right? I didn't think about that, but that's a very good point.
It happened. It happens way too often. Was it AJ Epinesa coming out of Iowa who went to the Buffalo Bills? I think
they just never got that right.
They had his weight fluctuating. One year he's playing 280, next year he's playing 265. And it's like
Yator Gross Matos, I think,
yes,
is a guy that experienced that.
Yep. In Carolina, they bulked him up, they dropped him down, like just because, and it's all about then because I'll say this: there's a misnomer in the Twitter sphere about people. This is quote people like to say, "Well, don't for NFL teams don't draft for your scheme." This is why you do draft for your scheme, because if you draft a player that fits what you do, I've seen that a lot. People are like, well, don't draft guys that just because they fit your scheme, draft good football players. Yes, that's true. But if you draft a guy that fits your scheme, you're gonna know how to use him. So then let's say you lose that coach. Now a new scheme comes in because that's what happens with Yetur Gross-Matos and all that. I believe that Carolina switched. I think the whole coaching staff got fired and everything like that. They brought in Evero. He runs a 3-4 odd front. So now instead of you being a 265 strong side defensive end and an even front, now you got to bulk up to 275, 280 and play a defensive end like between a tackle and a guard. It's a different ball game based on the scheme, and that's when players get lost and their development gets lost in translation. So when it comes to Colin, I need to see what it looks like in person, right? Like, because again, the pass rush ability is there. Can you hold up in the run game at the NFL level? I think that's my biggest thing is the wingspan, the arm length, Keith, and then the overall functional strength at the point of attack. Because between the two, him and Stewart, Keith, I think we both agree. Stewart's more of a defensive end. This is more of an outside linebacker in the odd front scheme.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
But what if a coach or NFL followed that ideology from Twitter, then it's like, okay, well, we run a 4-3. Let's draft Colin Simmons, and it's like, okay. So they're gonna run that strong side. They throw that tight end over there. They're gonna run the ball right at this young man. And now we're in a situation where you can't stop the run. You're struggling to get off the field on third downs. They're in third and shorts all the time. I want to see this young man maybe answer that question of playing stronger at the point of attack. But if not that, I want to see what are the counters that we can still make you a 3-down player at the next level without that being such an issue, which I kind of know schematically. I'll put them in the odd front like Carolina Panthers. They got a big defensive line. Yeah, I'm like same thing with Nick Skousen, right? He wasn't a great run defender. Put him in Carolina, he was functional. They got a big defensive line that allows him to get those one-on-ones with guys that eat up space on the interior.
Yeah, DP, I have to be honest, man. I'm stuck on the don't draft players for your scheme situation. Like that's a wild. It's a wild.
I saw that a lot. I think it's from that and I'm not trying to start incite a wildfire with like the analytics crowd. I think it was some analytics people who were on Twitter during the draft season saying that, and I was like, that's interesting. I don't think you guys really understand how the NFL works, but okay. Schemes are everything in the NFL.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. That's why you get players who vary, right? And in the scheme versatile players, those are the guys that you just put in the elite bracket, right?
Those are the rare players.
Yeah, those are the rare ones, right? Like that's why they're rare players, because they can do it all. That's amazing. But back to Colin Simmons. DP, yeah, I think we're lock in step on that part with Colin Simmons, and I think it'll be interesting to see what he does this year, right? As far as a repeat performance, and then also too, I think what will unfold for Colin is that he's going to have to be a momentum player. Mm-hmm. What I mean is that if he finishes this upcoming season, and I don't foresee it because the man's sack production has been off the charts, right? But if he finished this season with 5 sacks, right? Do people start now to bring up the concerns more than they bring up the projection of him being elite, right? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I think he's going to have to do that because, we discuss it regardless, right? Whether a player is the hottest player in the country right now, we still talk about what the player needs to improve, right? But a lot of times people don't have the confidence to say those things, but they'll say it once the tide is starting to turn for you and you're not operating at an elite level, they feel more comfortable to announcing it. So he just has to kind of watch out for those things. But yeah, I'm right there. Colin Simmons' size, we're going to just have to pay attention to, see how he starts to negotiate with the offensive tackles. How does he operate in the run game and continue to project?
Keith, I'm looking at the schedule real quick. So I want our listeners to understand where we're coming from with this. You look at their schedule and the type of running backs you're going to face and the run games you're going to face in 2026. Week 2, September 12th, they host Ohio State. Bo Jackson, the running back at Ohio State, tough, hard-nosed runner. Their offensive line thing has size and strength. They're going to run the ball, play balance. Yes, Jeremiah Smith is there, Julian Saint, but they're going to run the football. Oklahoma is going to try to get the run game going. Tennessee is going to run the football. You got Jaden Ba, a guy we probably need to break down as well, over at Florida, October 17th. You got Kewan Lacey at Ole Miss that's going to run the ball. And a running back that people don't know about, Mississippi State running back Fluff Bothwell. Kid is talented. He can carry the rock. He's got speed, shiftiness, run hard. He's well built. LSU, Arkansas is going to run. Texas A&M is going. You got a multiple of games that you know that it's not going to be 40 pass rush snaps unless their passing game is just absolutely abysmal. You're going to have to play the run, and that's what one of the biggest point. I wanted to look at their schedule and see who they played this year, and I'm like, number one, that's not an easy schedule for Texas. You know what I mean? Like, that's not an easy schedule at all. But you're going to have teams come into your house. You're going to go there, and they're going to run the ball. You think Ohio State's going to come in on the road knowing that crowd's going to be loud and just have Julian Saint drop back 50 times? Absolutely not. They're going to run the football and try to play great defense. Get out of there. Like you said, Keith, it's not about looking crisp on offense. It's about getting out there with the W and with the win. If you don't think that Ryan Day is going to try to be physical, that's exactly what he's going to do. And so Colin Simmons is going to have plenty of tests, not just in the SEC, but even week 2 against the team that they played week 1 of last year.
Yep, I agree with DP. Let's do this, man. It is time to drop the draft grade, right? What grade do we have for Mr. Colin Simmons, the Texas edge rusher, heading into the 2026 college football season? We'll discuss that coming up next.
Thank you for making Locked On NFL Draft your first listen of the day. And thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network in America. It's all because of you, our everydayers. That's why we can celebrate 10 years of being in business with the Locked On Podcast Network. Keith, grades for Colin Simmons, the explosive, dynamic, but maybe a little undersized edge rusher out of Texas. What grade did you give him?
Yeah, I thought this was a easy bracket, right? Grade to give out. I gave him a first round grade, and I gave him Pro Bowl caliber, right? And I feel comfortable with that. Obviously, there's the elite tier out there, right? Like there's the all pro caliber, the top of the top, the rare. I didn't give him that, DP. I think that his sack production in college is rare, and I give him a lot of credit for that. But obviously, we keep talking about it, right? Like what translate, what doesn't translate, things like that, right? I think that his skill set and also the size being there it puts him in the round 1 conversation to be a Pro Bowl caliber, right? So I couldn't quite put him in the elite tier, but I put him in the tier of like, hey, you draft this guy, you're going to get a really productive football player, just overall.
Yeah, I gave him a round 1 grade as well, like an 8 point. I gave him an 8.5, which is immediate impact prospect. That's high, high first round, like top 15 for us over at Bleacher Report. I think Keith, it's going to be interesting because, again, people, you know how the draft, like you said, momentum and narratives. We know how that stuff goes come draft season. And as much as we talked about the concerns, right? We just saw a guy that had a similar concerns go 2nd overall, and that was David Bailey, right? See, he was a little bit heavier, 6'3", 250, and everything. Like at the combine, he looked like it's crazy because at his podium, he had like a jacket on, and then when we saw him take the jacket off and work, I'm like, okay, you've been in the gym. Like he looked more filled in. He looked stronger than he did during the season and everything. But he went 2nd overall. And why did he go 2nd overall? Pure pass rush ability. So it's like with Colin Simmons, I still think he's got a strong chance to be a top 10 pick, depending on how many quarterbacks we get, how many receivers in there. We get 2 or 3 corners, or these D tackles that we need to talk about and break down this summer as well. puts themselves in that type of trajectory. But I got him as a first-round grade. I think he could be an impact player out the gate for a defense. It's just, as we know, Keith, like you look at, remember Mike Green came out of what was it?
Out of Marshall. Was it
Marshall. I was about to say North Texas. That line, that kind of like light green threw me off. Out of Marshall, he went to Baltimore, and we know he's a pass rush specialist. But this isn't the Senior Bowl where you get to pin years back in 101s. You got to stop the run. We always talk about it on here, Keith. You got to earn the right to rush the passer. So I think with Colin Simmons, that's going to be a big thing. Because I looked at because I thought about it. I was like, man, let me see what Khalil Mack came in at when he was drafted. 6'3", 251. But for me, I remember watching Khalil, and their play styles when Khalil was at Buffalo are similar. Just high motor, like just guys that do not stop working to the ball, to the whistle is blown. I feel like Khalil had more power and strength as a prospect.
I agree.
And everything.
And maybe a little bit more explosive.
Yeah, maybe a little bit more explosive as well. I think, of course, the dip and bend and the hip fluidity goes to Colin Simmons in that regard. But I think it was like the game that really put him on the map in terms of Mac. I think it was against Ohio State. They lost the game, I'm pretty sure, but he dominated.
Yeah, I mean, did he have like 3 sacks or something? Something crazy, I believe.
I think so. Like, it was just like, okay, yeah, he's one of those small school prospects that absolutely should have first round buzz. So I thought about him. Like I said, David Bailey was 6'3", almost 6'4". He was 251. Had almost an 80-inch wingspan, ran a 4.5 and everything in the 40. So it's just different. Definitely different body types when you think about, just Colin Simmons or trying to find that comp. I'm going to pull up Mike Green and see what he came in at. I don't even think he did anything in the combine. Never mind. Mark Draft doesn't have anything on him.
Yeah.
I thought about Cassius Howell a little bit too, Keith. I was like, but I think he has longer arms than Cassius.
Yeah,
so,
and Cassius.
I don't know, man. It's definitely an interesting situation when you talk about what Colin Simmons is going to bring to the table overall. It's just a very interesting spot.
Well, DP, I thought of Byron Young, because Byron Young is an undersized pass rusher who's been productive. And I pulled up the stats, right? I mean, last season he finished top 10, right? Like, so this is a guy that's trending to be one of the more consistently good pass rushers. Now, Byron Young went in the, I think, second, third round?
Top of the second.
Yeah, but the thing is, we collectively like Byron Young a lot. Like I think if you could redo it, he would be a first round pick, right? He'd probably go in the middle of the first round, as a pass rusher. So I thought of somebody like that, just in that kind of category, in that stratosphere of pass rushers. So Byron Young came to mind. Nick Bonito is a very interesting
That's the other one.
Type player, and
he's the outlier too, because he's the only one. I looked at the top 10 pass rushers he was the only one. It was him. Now, I don't think Will Anderson weighs that much now. I've seen some of his OTAs clips. Oh yeah, Will Anderson looks much stronger and bigger. He might be 255 at this point. But he was ESPN had him listed at 243 last year. Those are the only two guys that were sub 250 in the top 10, top 15 of sacks from last year.
Yeah, and from a length perspective, right? Because you're looking at this list, you got Myles Garrett, Brian Burns, Daniil Hunter, Aiden Hutchinson, Michael Parsons in there. You got James Pierce Jr., Montez Sweat, Max Crosby, Chase Young. You got guys with a lot of length, right? That's closer to that 6'5" with a lot of arm length. Talking about some of the top pass rushers. So yeah, I think throwing out those couple of names, the Byron Youngs, the Nick Bonitos, things like that, could be interesting case studies for Colin Simmons, but also neither one of those guys went very high in the draft. You're talking about top 10 picks, but I think I'll say this, and I feel like you agree with me. I feel good about his floor also, talking about Colin Simmons. I feel good that, maybe he won't be the top edge rusher in the entire NFL, but I feel like he can be a consistent double-digit sack guy in the NFL just based off of process alone. But
yeah, 100%. I'll close it out, Keith. I agree with you. And again, I want our listeners to know, we're not saying he may never be some just all-world run defender. But we're not saying he's a bad run defender either. No. He gives effort. He plays to the whistle. He plays with as much power, strength that he has. He plays, I think, with good leverage as well. He keeps a good pad level. So this is a guy where you might want him on outside shaded of the tight end and let him just kind of play that outside contain in the run game rather than him head up on tackles time and time again. But he's a functional run defender, but an outstanding near elite pass rusher that if you can get him in those true drop back sets, he's going to collapse the pocket and get to the quarterback time and time again, be a heavy pressure guy. Maybe if he doesn't even have 15 sacks, he may have 50, 60 pressures in the season, but he's also a guy that if he gets off that blind side, he goes to the football too, kid. So he had like 3 forced fumbles, I believe, last year. So this is definitely a guy that goes after the ball.
Yeah, I think and usually we don't see this with edge rushers, right? You get it with, quarterbacks and maybe running backs, wide receivers that may be. It's the proven, like him versus Dylan Stewart. If they have repeat performances of last year, it'll be the proven production versus the potential. That's what it's going to come down to for these two prospects, right? Like do GMs decide to believe in upside, right, and swing for the fences with a prospect that potentially hasn't done it before, or do they go with the guy who's consistently done it? And I mean, if he put start off as a freshman with 9 sacks and then follow up with 12, and if you follow up with more double-digit sacks, I mean that you're talking about one of the more consistent and better pass rush resumes that we've seen in college football, and essentially since doing this. But DP, that wraps up another episode, man, of the Locked On NFL Draft Podcast. I want to end this podcast off by saying shout out to our everydayers. Thank you for tapping in with us each and every single day. I am Keith Sanchez. You can find me on X at The Talent Code. That right there is my guy, my co-host, Mr. Damian Parson. You can find him on X at DP_NFL. And like we like to say, man, y'all can talk to us because we like to talk back.
Go subscribe and follow for free on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to get the latest episode as soon as it is available. Coming up on tomorrow's show, we're breaking down Oregon defensive end Mateo Uiagalelei. We're going to break down his game and what he brings to the table, talk about the pros, the cons, and giving you our grades and any comps that come to mind. So come and join the conversation again tomorrow on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.